date we went down to Boise.
Yeah.
Was the 24th, was the opening of the special extraordinary legislative session. And so we drove down to Boise on Sunday, and I wasn't planning on going, but I had watched a video from Misty Carlfelt with Health Freedom Idaho, and she was just saying, we need to physically be present. It's important that we're physically there. And she just kind of talked about when people show up, what a difference it makes. And I just got thinking, there's nothing that keeps me from going down there right now. I have my kids. My husband's going to be gone. I should just go. And so I talked to my husband, and we decided to get up in the car and pack and leave. And we got in late to Boise Sunday night and got up Monday morning and went to the special session. And we got there probably 15 minutes later than I wanted to. And so people were already lined up at the door to get into the seating on the 4th floor to go to the House floor. And there was a lot of people there, and so I ran and took my kids into the bathroom. So I thought, well, I'll go to the bathroom real fast, and then we'll come out. And we heard chanting, really, really, really loud chanting. Let us in. And I thought, oh, I wonder what's going on. Why are they keeping us out? This is strange. It's a public session. We'll find out in a minute. So by the time I got out of the bathroom, it was quiet again, but we'd heard a loud noise upstairs, and we didn't know what it was. And so we got to get to the back of the line of people trying to get into that room, and we were told that the glass in the door had broke. And I had heard from other people then after that there was a pushing and pulling on the door, was my understanding. Officers were trying to pull it closed, and people were trying to keep it open because I guess it had been open, but they were trying to close it on the people. And the pushing and pulling of the door, the officer, I guess, fell into the door and the glass broke. And that's my understanding of what took place.
And this is the area that's up above, I would call it the peanut gallery.
Yes, yes.
And they
up
wanted everyone to
floor.
sit 6 feet apart.
Yeah, they were going to let in like 26 people or something is what they were saying at the beginning. And it's the House floor. There's a Senate floor and a House floor, and they're opposite sides of the building. The House floor is on the 3rd floor, but then you go to the 4th floor, there's the gallery. You can sit around stadium-type seating and see everything. And that's just normal for us people go to sit. And so they're trying to force us to social distance. And we didn't want to. There was hundreds of us there, a couple hundred people that were there easily right then that were trying to get in and sit. And we were pretty frustrated because we wanted to be a part of this special session. We wanted to be there, see it, and be a part of the legislative process. So we weren't there to riot or to rally or anything else. We just wanted to be a part of the process and see how it worked. And from my perspective, going there with my kids, I wanted to show them how the legislative process worked by being there, not just talking about it in a book.
So talk about the glass break.
So yeah, after the glass broke, then everybody was kind of confused on what to do next, and they weren't really clear on directing us. And so the House speaker came out and talked to some people, and I wasn't there. I only saw it in video later. I was standing there, but I didn't see him come out. And the ISP officers were all at the door, and there were, from where I was standing, at least 8 of them that I could see. And they came out and decided to let us in as long as we agreed to be quiet and observe the legislative process with respect, and no hoot and hollering, no clapping, kind of the standard things that we expected not to be able to do. And everybody felt pretty passionate. It's hard when you feel really passionate about something to not speak out, and so it did take a little bit of time to practice restraint and to just make sure we're being respectful and quiet like we were supposed to, because we haven't been able to be at these proceedings in the past where we haven't engaged as citizens. And so agreed, it was difficult for us at first, but I think we did really well once they came out and said, just make sure you're abiding by these rules and the decorum for these meetings, and you're fine. And so they let us come in. We brought our bags in, and everybody kind of filled the seats, and they came and said, hey, no standing room. You have to sit in a chair specifically, which some people had to leave because there wasn't enough room. At that time, Misty and Sarah were there being press, and they were allowed to sit in the press section across from the gallery where the stadium seating was.
Yeah.
And so there's a small skinny row. If anybody's been at the Capitol, you can see that row. It's behind special glass. So as you're sitting in the gallery, you're looking across at it, and they're allowed to sit there and put their cameras towards the Speaker of the House and be able to basically just record it from a really special vantage point. And so they were allowed in with their press passes, and they sat over there, and so we got to kind of see them, and they were seeing us, and it was a good session. It started out really nice, and nobody was really angry or anything. They were just frustrated they couldn't be in the room. And that's, when I had my 5 kids in there. So
well, and I watched the video afterwards, and so there were a couple times when the speaker was like, we need decorum, and I couldn't hear anything.
Right.
So I'm like, why is he doing a decorum thing? And that must be why, because you guys are up high.
Yes, we were up high.
We can't see you, and we can't hear you when the camera
is down there.
It's
like this echoey
him.
thing. Yeah. And it's really hard to hear up there. It's really hard to hear what they're saying. A lot of us would have to say, what did he just say? Wait, what does that mean? Because you're missing half of everything they say. because it doesn't, even though they have TVs on both sides, you can't hear well up there. And everybody kind of said the same thing. What are they saying? Like, you would shush your neighbor because you're trying to hear. People are cupping their ears, like trying to get the information. So it was very frustrating from our perspective that it wasn't louder up there. And I'm sure they could hear little bits of things down there. We were trying to be quiet, but it's very hard to hear. And so you were trying to follow it because it was very important to know what's happening next. They didn't start out saying, hey, we have a lot of people here, and I know that you're not used to this. This is how the day is going to go. They should have, because they had a full gallery, which they never have. And so from our point of view, it would have been nice to know what was expected next. So we were a little lost and confused throughout the day trying to figure out where we were supposed to be, because they never really were clear. Or they'd say, we're going to adjourn until such and such time approximately, and they might say a room, and they might not. And then throughout the day, they were changing which meeting rooms we were going to be in. And so it was like we were scattering all around the Capitol building all day long. So that first day was very chaotic, trying to figure out what was expected of us.
Well, and I was texting one particular legislature from Kootenai County, and he shall remain nameless, but even he was confused as to where he needed to go. And he's like, they've been planning this for a week or two, and it's still confusing even to the people that are more involved and know the ropes.
Yes. And well, one of the first meetings, and because I was trying to get my kids rallied with hundreds of people that were in the building, I lost track of exactly what was going on. So I would ask people in the hallways, where am I supposed to be at? Where am I going? What's happening next? Because I got a little confused. Like I said, I couldn't hear very well. But they started off in a smaller room and then moved us to the Lincoln Auditorium because it was larger.
Is the Lincoln the one that we saw on the news?
Yes.
Okay.
It was basically the biggest room I saw while I was there. There may be another one, but that's the biggest one I saw. And it had like the stadium seating where, it sloped downward and we could all be in there. And so it was really kind of them to accommodate us in a larger room. So I do give them credit for that, because they tried to put us in a smaller room and then social distance us in that room. And so we had hundreds of us trying to get in to give testimony and just wanted to hear and see how the process works. I mean, when you look at Robert's rules and kind of how they speak and the language they use, that's already really confusing to follow when you're not familiar with that.
I always joke that I'm allergic to Robert's rules, and I see the point of it, but it's like mind-numbing watching paint dry type of stuff. But when you have a big group of people, it's the best way to keep everything heard and doing it in order, and
they're talking over each other, and everybody kind of yield the floor too. Like, it's very strange language when you hear things like that, and it's confusing because some things I didn't really know what it meant because it wasn't clear. And I looked over and say, "Did we just adjourn? I'm not really sure. Are we supposed to be quiet again? Can we talk now?" I mean, it was confusing. So we'd wait to see what they were going to do to know what we were allowed to do. And so it would have been nice if they just would have said, "This is how it goes." Just kind of give us a basic overview, because we were going to be there obviously for the whole day, and they didn't take the time to explain, and maybe they didn't consider that we didn't know all of that. I don't really know what was talked about. Maybe they didn't expect us to show up in such great numbers. And some people think that, Ammon told everybody to be here, and so it's his group of people that were there. And while I do follow some of the things that Ammon does, he didn't tell me to be there. I came there on my own volition, actually, from hearing Health Freedom Idaho talk about how important the session was. And so I wasn't there following him or at his directive or at his behest. It was, he had people there that were with him and that were his friends, but I came on my own volition. So
and from what I read, there were a lot of people from Ada County where they have even stricter mask mandates than Kootenai County that were there going, we hate this, let's get this House resolution passed.
And they were there to voice that, voice their frustration. And I don't know how many people were there from North Idaho. I don't think very many, but I took up the drive down there and I paid the money to be in a hotel and stayed for the week with my children because this was so important. And so I wish people would see through this interview that it was very chaotic, and like you said, it was for the legislative members as well and for the Senate members, because I think that there was a lot of, we got to probably change the way we're doing things because we have a huge amount of people that showed up that we didn't expect, that aren't normally here. They're used to working in smaller rooms, smaller groups, not having a lot of people there, and so I would give them grace for that, especially on day one. But when we came on day two, we were told that in the morning that anybody that signed up to give public testimony on day one, on Monday, they would be allowed to give testimony on day two, on Tuesday, but nobody else new could sign up. Well, on Monday, I was just getting the ropes of things, and I wasn't sure that I had anything that I necessarily wanted to say. I just wanted to be a part of the process. But by Tuesday, I talked things over, and I learned a lot from Monday, talking with legislative reps, talking with senators in the hallways, just talking with other people that know more about the process than I do, and really getting to the meat of the issues, that I had something I wanted to say. I felt strongly that I would like to give my 2 cents, at least I would be an outside Ada resident, somebody else from another part of the state that had another opinion that I was hoping might carry a little bit of weight, that it was not just Ada County people or Canyon County people that came. And so I thought, I do want to talk. And I was really frustrated on Tuesday that I would not be allowed the opportunity now. And that we were down to half the amount of people that showed up on Tuesday than what was there on Monday. So you have to guarantee that some of those people that were there on Monday that were signed up to speak wouldn't be there. And that was frustrating that I wasn't allowed to take their spot. Yeah. So day one, there was a lot of people that didn't get to testify. We ran out of time, and they had signed up to give public testimony. And so on day two, a lot of people didn't show up because they had to go to work, or they couldn't come back for whatever reason. They didn't plan on being gone for 2 days. So probably half the people showed up on Tuesday would be my guesstimate. And our frustration was that we were told first thing by Chairman Cheney that we would not be allowed to substitute testimonies. So people didn't show up that were signed up from the day before, then we couldn't substitute, and maybe I could then maybe speak. And so that was really frustrating, that if they were signed up and they were going to be allowed to speak, that I couldn't then just take their place.
Or the other standard thing that our county commissioners will do sometime is you can cede your time to someone else.
Yes,
like if I have 3 minutes and you have 3 minutes, yes, I'll cede my time. You now have 6 minutes, yes, to talk, and that's usually more normal.
Right.
If you represent a big group, then everyone feels like they've been heard, even if it's just their representative.
I agree.
Getting more time.
And I would have been, and that would have been fine too. But they would not. Somebody specifically went and asked that, and they said no, you're not allowed to. So they were really trying to stifle the public comments, is what it felt like to people, and we were very frustrated as a people that we were feeling like they didn't want to take the time to hear us. And I know that they didn't plan on having us there, and so maybe in their minds, I'm thinking they possibly thought this was going to be a short session. We're going to get through what we need to get done and get home, and that we made the process take longer because we wanted to give public testimony. But it would have been nice if they would have been happy to hear from us to get a more well-rounded view of what we wanted. But when we felt like they were trying to stifle us, it got people stirred up to be frustrated. So on day one, there were ISP were there, and they were very present, and we were very aware that they were there. And it was weird that there were so many in the state capitol building, and it was quite intimidating. But on day two, there were at least double the number that were there on day one, and there was half of us that were there on day two. So it didn't make sense why they doubled their numbers when there were half as many people there on day two. And so it was very frustrating. And at one point in time on Tuesday, I counted 29 ISP at the end of the West Wing, which is where we were at for part of the time. And so I thought, wow, this is pretty intimidating to have all of these people lining the walls, standing in front of the doors so that we couldn't be in there. And they would allow certain people in until they reached capacity for social distancing, and then they would say you can't come in, and someone would have to come out, and then you could go in. And then Chairman Cheney did say, hey, it'd be nice if you got done speaking and you didn't have anything to say, if you would leave and let somebody else come take your place who's going to be speaking next. And they would call 3 people in next to sit in the special seats who were going to be next up, kind of thing. So if people were going to go out and be around the building, they could call them back. And it was sort of up to us as citizens to just organize ourselves. And there was one person, Nancy was there, and she was kind of keeping tabs with people and trying to call them and go around and get them to come in so that everybody could get their time and we wouldn't be wasting time. And it was just citizens who were taking the time and initiative to be organized. So we were trying to be organized and reasonable, but they were making it very difficult for us. And so there were other sub-rooms. They did make the testimony allowed so we could hear it. They would have it on screens in neighboring rooms. And so we did commit one room to this, is if you're a mom with kids, go in here and the kids can kind of play and be noisy, and we'll try to listen anyways, and then just kind of one foot in the hallway to see whose turn is it up next, kind of thing.
Yeah.
So they did accommodate us in another room next door, which was fine, but it would have been nicer if we could have all been in the auditorium to all hear at the same time, because the TVs just aren't the same to hear people's hear their testimonies, and they didn't pan to all the different members. So if you're not in the room, you can't see people's reactions to things that are being said. Seeing somebody's reactions to what their testimony that they're hearing is telling as to how they might feel about something. Or if they disagree with other members, they look at each other and you can see that. So being in the same room together at the same time really does give more insight into if somebody's feeling compassion for what's being said. You can see that. It might make me like that representative a little bit more if I see that they are actively listening. When a representative picks up their cell phone in the middle of testimony and starts talking,
then you know they're not paying attention. Or they're communicating quietly with someone.
Yes, and that's what happened at one point in time in the Lincoln Auditorium. One of the reps picked up her cell phone and covered her mouth and was talking and laughing. And was it about the person who was giving testimony, or was it about something private or something totally unrelated, and it's her child at home? I don't know. We don't know who it was, but I found it
would come across rude regardless.
It became very disrespectful, and I was very upset about it, and I couldn't stop looking over at her, realizing how rude, and I wanted to go up quietly to the side and say, do you know how rude you're being right now? Because as a mom, I'm like, hello, why are you doing this? And so that to me was disrespectful. And I was told afterwards by somebody who attends these meetings often, I don't put them on the spot, but that this is common practice for them to pick up their cell phone and answer phone calls in the middle of meetings. And I'm thinking, if these are committee meetings and hearings and things that are important, why wouldn't you be giving your full focus to that? And maybe it's just because they're used to going to so many of these meetings. I don't know.
Well, and when I know, like the person I mentioned earlier in our interview, when he is in session, I was trying really hard not to text him.
Yes.
But like a couple people that I knew that spoke, I would email them or text them right after I saw them sit down, and then sometimes they would respond.
And so I wished I had.
So I was trying not to do that because I'm like, I don't want to be the
distracting. Right, and I could see needing to get text messages or whatever in between testimonies and things because it could be relevant. I wished in the gallery one day that there was one question that just wasn't being asked, and I thought, why is nobody asking this question? Every person would come up and talk. I'm like, and again, it wasn't asked. Why isn't this not being asked? And I wasn't signed up to speak, therefore I couldn't ask the question. Had I had someone's cell phone number, I would have texted, why is nobody asking whatever the question was, right? And then it would have felt like, okay, maybe somebody will just ask it now. Because for heaven help me, if someone doesn't ask it. We were running out to people who were going to give testimony next in the hallway, asking them to ask questions on our behalf, those of us who weren't signed up, because we were just dying to get these. We just wanted answers. We had questions, concerns, and wanted to have a discussion. That's all it came down to. We weren't rioters. We weren't there to cause contention. And that's what I'm seeing in the media. The media is spinning it as we were there to create chaos and to disrupt the ceremony that was happening or the meeting that was going on. And that was not it at all. And if somebody had been there to see that we were actively trying to get answers and we were listening, and then other questions would arise. That's how you have communication. That's how you have a conversation. And that was what we were all doing there. And so if there was anybody else that was there for any other reason, I don't know who that was.